Funding for this program is provided by Annenberg CPD to advance excellent teaching.
What motivates human beings to behave as they do and feel the way they feel? Why are certain human emotions universally recognizable? What can we learn from studying sexual attraction? Motivation and emotion, this time on Discovering Psychology.
What's going through my mind right now is a lot of pain.
You are 3 blocks away. Would you like some beer?
No, thanks. No,
All right, you are doing good.
Whenever I watch a marathon, I'm always amazed as the last runners stagger toward the finish line. Even though their times are embarrassingly slow, they keep going, determined to finish. The race was lost, and lost badly, but that didn't stop the runners from moving relentlessly toward the finish line. In fact, it's from the Latin word movere, to move, that we get the psychological term motivation. Motivation is the general term for all the physical and psychological processes that start behavior, maintain it, and stop it. It's part of the explanation for what made the runners hang in there when most of us would have quit. We want to know what motivates people to do good deeds and what triggers them to do evil. When psychologists study motivation, they too look for the causes of behavior by trying to separate those causes of behavior that come from the environment from causes that come from the individual. For example, the motivation for an act of aggression might be the result of political factors, or it could be influenced by the heat or a hostile crowd, all of which are environmental factors. Or the aggression might be caused by factors within the individual, psychological factors such as hostility or frustration, or physical cause such as a brain disorder. But whatever the factors involved, the result is movement, action. So when psychologists study what motivates organisms, they really study what makes them act, what makes them move towards some things and avoid or ignore others. When we can't help moving towards something, we have an addiction, which dominates our other actions. We're motivated by an overpowering desire. And when we have an unnatural aversion to something, we have a phobia. We're motivated by an overwhelming fear.
We're worried about you. And so are your neighbors and your son.
Just leave me. Just leave me. I'm not going anywhere.
But between these two extremes lie the motivational currents that shape the flow of our daily lives. Motivations that are constantly reflected in our preferences for some activities over others, the intensity of what we do, and the persistence of our actions. For example, most living creatures are motivated, above all, to survive. They have a preference for those actions that sustain or protect themselves. They pursue them with great intensity, and they persist in behavior that maximizes their chances for survival. Evolution has always been on the side of those individuals who are strongly motivated to survive, move toward what they need while moving away from, or opposing whatever threatens them. Usually, if something is pleasurable, we're motivated to get it. And if it's painful, we're motivated to avoid it. It's a very simple, and in most cases, a very effective survival mechanism. But culture, family, and personal experience also define what is desirable and what is not. We get into trouble when pleasurable things like alcohol, drugs, or tobacco are actually bad for us. Or when painful things, like studying hard, are good for us. In fact, much of life involves a clash between the basic motivation to seek pleasure and the constraints of society which direct us to restrain ourselves. A vital part of growing up in most societies involves training by adults in how to reframe the tensions between desire and restraint.
David, remember, no crashing. If you guys don't slow down, we're going to have to take them away from you.
I will slow down.
We learn to do what initially seems irrelevant or even distasteful, but which will pay off down the line. But does the desire ever go away? Sigmund Freud thought not. Desire never goes away, he said, no matter how strong the restraint. Freud analyzed behavior in terms of underlying unconscious motivation, a process hidden deep in the unconscious mind. According to Freud, there are two primary motivations that have to be repressed. There's our motivation as children to seek sexual satisfaction or pleasurable physical contact, and our motivation to express aggressive, violent urges against those who thwart us in our pursuit of pleasure. But no matter how much effort we put into restraining these basic drives, they still find a way to break into our consciousness. Our concealed motives are revealed through our anxieties, our slips of the tongue, dreams, and fantasies. Freud had a fairly negative, restricted view of motivation, based on his own experience and that of his neurotic patients. But later theorists, such as Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, added a more positive dimension to the study of psychological motivation by focusing on normal, healthy people and the interplay between human nature and society.
How good a society does human nature permit? And then, the other one, that's your, how good a human nature does society permit?
After our basic survival needs are met, Maslow believed, we become motivated by needs for attachment with others and for esteem. He proposed that there is a hierarchy of needs which dominates the individual's motivation. As each level is adequately satisfied, the higher needs occupy the individual's attention and effort. There are so many different types of motivation that it's difficult to select one to illustrate the process by which motivation influences actions. But if we have to pick just one to study in depth, we want something that isn't essential for individual survival, but which motivates an enormous amount of behavior among all living creatures. We want something that has both psychological and biological causes. Something that can be triggered by a smell, a sight, a touch, or even a fleeting thought. Something that motivates you, me, the birds, and the bees.